So now that we've completed our requirements portion of our software system, we can go more into the design portion of the system, and that's going to begin with software architectures. So, what is a software architecture? Well, a software architecture pretty much sets up the base for design and implementation. It's really that first step in the design process. And a really good model that I've seen used is this concentric circle model. And I'll try to draw these circles as well as I can. I believe I only need 3. So we'll switch back to the red. So we have this first arrow, this first layer. Then we have that second layer, third layer. And right here at the base of our system, we have our code. And then right before our code, I suppose, we have our implementation. Then we have our design. And then here we have our software architecture. So the software architecture really builds the base of this, I suppose, software system. You could see it more as, I suppose, a three-dimensional shape, as kind of a bird's eye view of these concentric circles. Instead of like a bunch of circles, it's more of like a canyon or a mountain. I guess these are the canyons actually, but as this type of shape where our code is at top, then we have a implementation layer, then we have a design layer, then right here at the base, the foundation, we have our architecture. And we'll go ahead and just get rid of that to free up some space. And there are a few different architectures that we're going to be concerned with, and I'll go ahead and get a nice blue to talk about those. Now we're going to dedicate a lecture to each architecture because every architecture is important and you need to know the in-depth explanations of them so you can find which is most appropriate for your software system in particular. So we've defined this software architecture as kind of our foundation for our design and implementation of our code and our agreed actions to solve our list of problems we talked about earlier in the requirements engineering process. So, what are the different types of software architectures? We have repository, data flow, centralized control, client server, event-driven, layered systems, object-oriented, and domain-specific. Now, those are a lot to write out right away, and for some people, it might be hard to remember all those different architectures when you go to design a particular software. So we've created an acronym that kind of makes sense and will help you remember all the different software architectures called DLC Coder. So DLC in, I suppose, gaming and other software systems stands for downloadable content. And a coder is someone, who programs. So this software architecture can be remembered all different types as a DLC coder, someone who codes downloadable content. It's related to both software and it really helps us remember our different software architectures. So we'll begin up here with D in we'll go ahead and switch to a lighter blue to fill in our acronym. So we start with data flow. And I'm not going to go in depth really at all into these different software architectures because we're going to dedicate an entire lecture to each and every one. So data flow, otherwise known as pipeline, but for this acronym, we'll just leave it as data flow. Then we have layered system, which is just going to be it's going to be very common for web applications and other types of, I suppose, mobile applications that require databases. Then we have client server, which is something that a lot of people know already. It's a very common architecture. Then we have centralized control, centralized control. And that's going to be systems where there's like a hierarchy where everything starts in the middle and branches out, or everything starts at the top and flows down. Then we have object-oriented, which I'm just going to abbreviate as OBJ, object-oriented. And of course, I don't think I really need to go in depth about object-oriented. I will in the lecture dedicated to this, but for now, just remember that's object-oriented. And then for our second D, we have domain-specific. Then for E, we have event-driven, which again is a very popular software architecture. Pretty much is just triggered by different events, and you have an event handler that listens for those specific events within the software. Then we have repository as the last software architecture. So our repository is pretty much just a shared database, and all the different components of the software share those resources. They might each have their own dedicated database, but they all share that common repository. And since we'll reference this canvas for future lectures, I'm just going to go ahead and put this architecture, that architecture, our software architecture, is the foundation of design and implementation. So this is just kind of as a reminder of what software architecture is. And in the coming lectures, we'll go ahead and define and kind of go in depth and draw different diagrams that illustrate all these different architectures.